Hi, I'm Stephanie Rearick, and we're here at Impact Economy Summit 2015. I'm joined by Michel Bauwens of P2P Foundation and Tiberius Brastaviceanu from Sensorica, and we are going to talk today about the relationship between the market and the commons. So please first let us know what we mean by the market and the commons.
Okay, so basically I think both Tibi and I talk about commons-based peer production, which is a system where contributors in an open system create shared resources using open source design, software, coding, whatever. And of course they have to make a living. So that means that they also need a connection with the market. Now most traditionally in the open source economy, you have a separation between the two. You have a commons where people contribute, paid or not, and then you have the companies doing their own thing with their own rules. An alternative vision which I'm promoting is the idea of moving from an extractive form of capital, which tries to extract value from the commons, to one that's co-generating commons. Now in that context, I think Tibi is working on something quite specific on another model, I think, which creates a more direct relationship between what people are doing and contributing to the commons and the possibility of generating income and benefits from the market in a more direct fashion through some new form of contributory accounting. So I'll let him explain that and see how the visions are maybe different or complementary.
Wonderful. Let's hear about.
Yeah, so just to contextualize it a little more, Sensorica is about hardware production. So we talk about commons-based peer production in the context of material things, material products. And one of the big problems that we face is if we talk about the market, there is a community or a network of people or an organization that produces something. If we talk about the commons, we talk about shareable designs, processes. And so the big problem that we face is going to the market in an open and transparent way, sharing these designs of these material products, and how can we make sure that we don't get bypassed by other opportunistic organizations that just copy these designs and distribute them, perhaps in different ways. So in that case, the revenue would not flow back to the organization that created that value in the first place. So the way we go about it is to understand that transparency and openness can be seen as a vulnerability because you open yourself to be copied, but at the same time can be seen as an advantage because you're able to pool resources into this economic activity. So the whole idea is, how can we create these powerful attractors, these powerful centers of action that take advantage of transparency and openness and become a more effective economic agent? In other words, how can we bid these opportunistic entities to the market? Okay, and there are different ways to do that. So by increasing the inflow of resources, of ideas, one outcome of that is increasing the speed of innovation. So if you're operating in a market that is very, very fast in terms of innovation, such organizations can out-innovate classical organizations, right? There's also the possibility of creating network effects by implementing the open source design principles. It naturally produces products that are modular, interoperable, that have the ability to grow ecosystems around them. Okay, and so that creates sort of a network effects and lock-in mechanisms, creates loyalty. Loyalty for users because they want to use products that they can plug into other products, products that are modular so they can be updated or upgraded. So it draws in users, but also developers that are probably developing something on the side, but they want to plug into this ecosystem, right? So we're exploring different ways to take transparency and innovation and not rely as much on protective mechanisms like licenses or patents, right? In order to become economically more effective, more efficient than closed organizations.
Well, actually, what I'm kind of trying to get out of you to be here in this conversation is the open value accounting part. So the kind of idea that people log their contributions without necessarily having guarantee of being paid for it, just because they want to do it and they want to innovate, they're motivated by their own designs, by their own reasons. But then what can happen in a classic way is that some people will go to the market and will capture the value that has been collectively produced, and it's not fair that some people get the value and then a lot of other contributors do not get the value.
Yes.
And I think in your system, by logging all the contributions and by linking it to post-facto income, that you have a way to actually fairly redistribute the income to all the people who contributed in some way to that project.
Yes. So so that's one big part of how Sensorica operates. As you operate in an open way, means that anybody throughout the world can participate in this economic activity. And in order to make it sustainable, we have a system in place that captures everyone's economic contribution to a project, and through an evaluation system transfers it into equity. Okay, and there are multiple recipes for these kind of things. We can work with funded projects, or we can work with potential future revenues. Funded project as a service, we have a budget. Let's break it down in tasks, and people come, they log their contributions. At the end, when it's done, we distribute these funds according to everyone's input. Or here's a project, we're going to bring it to market one day. We might have some crowdfunding in between, but there's going to be some revenue generated by selling it. And so in this case, you don't know how much you're going to get, so we have a notion of fluid equity that we implement. That's a shift in paradigm. Going from the way closed organizations work, which is you're paid a salary, and I want to make sure that you are working for the 8 hours I'm paying you. So we're going into a time management kind of paradigm. And this is governed by a bell curve statistics of contributions to a different regime of production, which is we call the long tail, with contributors from around the world. Some of them contributed a lot, some of them contributed just a little bit. So we capture all these contributions, and we're going from time management, paying salary and making sure people work, to contribution management. Show me what you have contributed. Is that valuable? Does everybody agree that this fits into what we want to do? In that case, it becomes a deliverable, and you're issued equity for your participation.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think one of the aspects that maybe not visible immediately is that there is no capital and labor in this system, right? It's people contribute tasks, but they contribute resources as well. So the kind of sharp division between people who pay and command and others who execute is actually not there in this new system. And people are voluntarily working, and other people are voluntarily contributing all kinds of resources, not just money, and everything is accounted for in one system. So I think that's another really big advantage of your model.
That's a good point. There is no clear distinction between money and time. It's the acknowledgement that every human being is resourceful, and all these human assets can contribute to this project. So somebody can contribute with its skills or her skills. It's a time contribution, or with sharing a space for the project, sharing some equipment, or funding, buying some materials, or even paying someone, reducing that someone equity and gaining that same part of equity. So we see everybody as being an investor in this system. Yeah.
And how do you see this in context of the relationship between the commons and the market? Do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I mean, a potential downside, I don't know if it's a real downside, it's a potential downside, is, so let's imagine YouTube, for example, right? So people are sharing all kinds of videos for all kinds of reasons. Once you say, we'll pay the successful ones, you get a completely different behavior, because people then start saying, oh, I put more sex and violence in my video, I'll have more visitors. And so you're really destroying these social commons when you do that. It's called crowding out. So market incentives can crowd out commons incentives. Now, I'm not saying this is actually happening in Tibi. It's just something to watch out for. And maybe Tibi can tell me what he thinks about it. Have you noticed such dangers in your system? Because what you're doing is a more direct relationship between contributing and actually getting income from it. It's not you didn't commodify it, but you did create a more direct relationship. Does that change the behavior of the people on the common side?
Well, a project is very complex, or can be very complex. If we're talking about producing hardware or co-producing hardware, it has a lot of facets and elements to it. So first of all, there are different roles. There's people that get involved in making the thing, and there are roles for coordination, roles for facilitation. We call them support roles, roles of animation. And from roles, we're going to the power of attraction of a project. So projects are open, okay? They're not, I like to use the metaphor of companies as seen as a box. And there's a in French language, French people call companies une boîte, which means a box. Essentially, if you have a new project in mind, you go and look inside the box and say, do we have enough people? Do we have enough resources? Well, projects in Sensorica are open enterprises. So take the box and flip it around. Now the question is, do we have enough resources? There is no more confinement. Okay, the budget is a dimension of confinement. The number of individuals that you have, as you know, you pay in your company, it's another dimension of confinement. In Sensorica projects being open, the question is not do we have enough resources to do it? Is the project attractive enough to gather the required resources? So then, projects need to be able to. There are values associated with these projects. Without these values around the project cannot succeed, because you can't force the project to advance. So I think that's a sort of a checking and balance mechanism. I don't see a possible project in Sensorica that would damage the environment, that would harm people. I can't see a military project within Sensorica, because that kind of project might not have the power of attraction. And that goes down to roles, which are, how do we sustain this operation? How do we scale this operation? How do we attract resources? And all these people that take these roles are conscious about these layers of values around the project, because the end goal is to attract enough resources. If the project doesn't have resonance, it doesn't happen, right?
Maybe I can turn the mic to you, Stephanie.
Sure.
Because you're doing the mutual aid network. Is anything of this resonating in your environment? Like, how do you see yourself this kind of combination between market and commons in your mutual aid network?
This resonates very well with mutual aid networks. So mutual aid networks are a project to integrate these things into an ecosystem and really explicitly designed to build the commons and to create opportunities for people to do exactly what they want to do with their lives and to live well from it. And our framework is that things which are infinitely abundant, like caregiving and civic engagement and creativity and community building, and also things which really are basic human needs, really we needn't compete for with scarce resources. And we can use things like actively building the commons and choosing to share in that, and using things like time banking and other forms of mutual credit to exchange things that are more abundant, and then the things that are scarcer that really rely on highly technical skill sets or finite resources, that they are appropriate to be in a competitive marketplace. And we need to change the terms of competition. So, I mean, the pretend idea about capitalism now is that the competition rises things to their highest and best use, and we know it's such a rigged game, but to really just take that back on and sort of hack capitalism. So we are really looking in mutual aid networks to connect commons building and mutual credit and different ways of managing money and compensating each other. So the Sensorica model fits really beautifully in my worldview, that we need all of it in its sort of proper place, and we really certainly need to come to some shared understandings of what that is, but we don't all have to share the same understanding because we can operate autonomously in that.
I'd like to wrap up actually. So, you know, when we're in the market and we believe we are in a world of scarcity, in the box we don't have all the things outside the box, right? So we have a mentality of competition. Once we open that up, so in the P2P Foundation Wiki, we say together we have everything and together we know everything. Because when you open the box, what you don't have, somebody else has. And I think both of you are really working on that, you know, in through practice, sinking in this kind of new consciousness about the abundance of resources and people that are out there to help you with projects and making good livelihoods.
And that's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you very much.